attending today. I am Jason Salazar, Chief of Police for the Visalia Police Department. As you can see, I'm joined here today by representatives from local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to announce the arrest of suspects in the May 5, 2020 triple homicide of Visalia teenagers Jose Hernandez Pena, Isaiah Rule, and Blake Medeiros. These arrests were made today as part of a multi-agency collaborative operation that took place in several Tulare County communities and in the states of Oregon and Texas. In today's operation, detectives arrested 20-year-old Marcus Sevis, 19-year-old Cesar Lopez, and 20-year-old Abraham Molina as the suspects responsible for the triple homicide in Visalia on May 5, 2020. All three of these suspects are Sureño criminal street gang members or associates from Visalia and Ivanhoe. In addition to the arrest related to that homicide investigation, this collaboration of law enforcement agencies served a total of 27 state search warrants, 5 federal search warrants, and 22 arrest warrants early this morning in the culmination of a multi-agency joint investigation dubbed Operation Trailblazer that you will hear more about in a few moments. But first, I'd like to take a moment to introduce those who are standing up here at the podium with me today. First off, we're honored to have California State Attorney General Rob Bonta with us, Tulare County District Attorney Tim Ward, Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau, California Department of Justice Director of the Bureau of Investigation Stephen Woolery, California Highway Patrol Chief Ryan Stonebreaker, and FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge Mark Rimmerly. And you will hear from a number of these folks here in a few moments. Each of the agencies they represent here were instrumental in this investigation that will not only bring justice to the victims of the triple homicide that occurred in Visalia in May of 2020, but have provided their expertise, resources, and dedication to public safety to disrupt the criminal activities of the Sureño criminal street gangs in the Visalia and Ivanhoe communities and across state lines. We'll hear more from them in a few moments about their roles in this investigation and pending state and federal prosecutions as a result of this investigative partnership. The Visalia Police Department is beyond grateful for all they have contributed to this investigation to making Visalia a safer place. But most importantly, their efforts bring justice to the victims of this horrible crime and justice and healing to the families who have been impacted by their loss. This investigation began on the night of Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. At around 11 p.m. that night, Visalia officers responded to a report of shots fired in the parking lot at Golden West High School in Visalia. When officers arrived, they found a car in the parking lot with 2 deceased males inside the vehicle and another deceased male in the parking lot, all of them having suffered from gunshot wounds. The investigation would reveal that the 3 victims of this crime, 19-year-old Jose Hernandez Pena, 18-year-old Isaiah Rule, and 19-year-old Blake Medeiros. Visalia police detectives immediately began their investigation, their efforts to solve this crime. They conducted numerous interviews, investigated numerous tips and leads, authored more than 90 search warrants, examined more than 200 digital accounts, and evaluated numerous pieces of evidence in a tireless effort to bring justice to these victims and their families. These cases can be difficult to solve, but throughout the past 20 months, the Visalia Police Department and the dedicated detectives who have worked so hard in this case never gave up. They never lost sight of their goal and were relentless in pursuing leads and information that would lead to arrests in this case. Some of those detectives are here today, Detective Baracolis and Detective Meyer. In September of 2020, the Visalia Police Department partnered with Central Valley Crime Stoppers to offer a $9,000 reward for information related to this case to generate information and new leads that would hopefully help us solve this crime. Working off of information developed in that ongoing investigation, in July of 2021, the Visalia Police Department reached out to the California Department of Justice, California Highway Patrol, Tulare County Sheriff's Office, and the Tulare County District Attorney's Office to initiate this joint investigation known as Operation Trailblazer. In October of 2021, the Visalia Police Department also applied to the Governor's Office for assistance with the reward in this investigation, again in hopes of developing new information and leads in this case that would hopefully bring someone forward with information that would lead to arrest in the case. And in December of 2021, we were notified by Governor Newsom's office that we were one of 4 agencies in the state who were receiving a $50,000 reward for information leading to arrest in this investigation. The resources brought to this investigation by all of these agencies allowed us to collaborate and expand investigative expertise, use the latest technology and advanced investigative techniques to conduct this investigation. But the primary objective heading into this investigation in collaboration with these partners was always to solve the May 5th, 2020 homicide, an horrific crime that shook this community. This investigation not only resulted in the identification and arrest of those suspects related to the triple homicide, but also uncovered and disrupted additional criminal activities of the Sereno criminal street gang related to firearms and drug trafficking that threatened our communities and worked across state lines. You'll hear the Attorney General speak more to that portion of the investigation in a few moments, but that discovery of those crimes also resulted in expansion of the investigative team to include the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the U.S. Postal Inspectors. In addition to the 3 suspects who were arrested for the homicides, additional suspects, as reflected on the chart to my left, were also arrested for a variety of other criminal charges in connection to the triple homicide investigations and other crimes related to their criminal street gang activities. This investigation also prevented at least 5 additional violent crimes from occurring and seized a total of 31 firearms from Sereno gang members and associates leading up to today, and then today an additional 24 firearms were seized from criminal gang members. I'm going to now turn over the podium to our California State Attorney General Rob Bonta, who will further discuss the role of the California Department of Justice in this investigation, and you will hear from a couple of additional speakers.
Salazar, for a very kind introduction of the partnership, and appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you. Let me first start with a huge gratitude and a thank you to the men and women of the Visalia Police Department and the Tulare Sheriff's Office for your everyday work to keep our community safe. Can't thank you enough, and very deep level of appreciation. Today's effort is a hard-fought win for public safety. Today, the people of Visalia can breathe a little easier, knowing that 3 horrific murders have been solved. The alleged murderers are behind bars, and our streets are safer. I echo what's been said again, because gratitude bears repeating. Thank you to the men and women of the Visalia Police Department, the Tulare Sheriff's Office, the Tulare County District Attorney's Office, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District. We're here today because of collaboration, because of partnership, sharing of information, and working together. To every officer who took part in this investigation, today's arrest of local Sereno criminal street gang members and the solving of this horrific triple homicide, thank you. Thank you for keeping us safe. I also want to specifically express my gratitude to members of my team at the Department of Justice within our Division of Law Enforcement, including those here today, including our Bureau of Investigation Director, Steve Woolery, and all the sworn officers and support staff in Special Operations Unit. Our Special Operations Unit is a collaborative effort between the DOJ and the CHP that provides statewide enforcement for combating violent career criminals, gangs, and organized crime groups. Since the request for assistance last August, our teams have worked collaboratively to solve these homicides and investigate firearms trafficking by Sereno gang members. And we stand here united to announce the important results of Operation Trailblazer, the results that the operation has delivered for the people of Visalia, and as you've heard, beyond, including across state lines. What began with the tragic murder of 3 young people led to law enforcement uncovering a drug and firearms conspiracy that reached from California to Texas and New Mexico, involving more than 24 suspects and a transnational weapons and drug trafficking ring. While our efforts cannot bring back the lives of the victims of these horrific homicides, we can bring to account the people who committed these crimes. Public safety is all about collaboration. This operation is a bright example of what's possible when we work together. We believe our joint investigation prevented at least 5 additional violent crimes. We seized nearly 36 firearms, and we ensured the alleged perpetrators will face justice. Every family deserves to be safe. And at the Department of Justice, we're working with all our partners to make that happen for all Californians. We will continue to hold criminals accountable. Those who commit serious crimes, including gunning down a group of young adults in a school parking lot, must face and will face serious consequences. Every child in California deserves to grow up in a safe neighborhood and in a safe community. I once again thank the men and women of our agencies who conducted this investigation and made these arrests possible. We must do all we can to ensure public safety, to build trust between our neighborhoods and law enforcement, and stop cycles of crime, including deadly gun violence, from perpetuating. For each of us here today, there is no job more important than ensuring public safety. It's job number one, always has been, always will be. That was on full display today, and will be back. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Tulare County District Attorney, Tim Ward.
First, let me thank the Attorney General, Mr. Bonta, and his team for traveling down here. I can tell you that today, the Office of the District Attorney filed a number of criminal complaints in Superior Court connected to this operation. First, the office filed one complaint charging 3 separate defendants with 3 separate counts of first-degree murder, along with the special circumstance of a multiple murder under Penal Code Section 190.2. Additionally, regarding defendant Abraham Molina, we filed a special allegation of personal use of a firearm. It is alleged that that defendant is the sole person who fired the murder weapon during this crime. The 2 remaining defendants are charged with the special allegation of a principal being armed during the crime, and we will have copies of the criminal complaint available today for anyone that asks. If convicted of all the charges in the allegation, each of these defendants faces a potential sentence of death. As this case progresses, our office will follow the long-standing process that we have established for determining if death will be the appropriate sentence. In addition to this complaint, my office filed a second one, charging 4 different defendants with 1 count of accessory to murder. 3 of those 4 defendants are also charged with a felony count of owning and operating a vehicle chop shop. Again, copies of the complaint will be made available to anyone that asks. The day that an arrest is made in a murder investigation marks the beginning of a path to justice for grieving families. Sometimes arrests are swift, and as we know, sometimes they take months or even years. In this particular case, it took hard-working detectives from the Visalia Police Department who never gave up. It took sheriff's deputies and our sheriff who never gave up. It took our Attorney General's support and his immense resources, and they never gave up. It took all of us working together to shepherd in this monumental operations resolution. Persistence, dedication, and resolve may be looked at as the themes for today, but let's not forget, let's take a moment. Think about families impacted by crime, not only in our county, but across the state, who are patiently waiting for their door of justice to open. Let today's theme for those of you in that situation simply be, please, never give up hope. Our partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office have, always, and will continue to be not only responsive to us, but they're going to continue to assist us as they handle the prosecution of some of the other defendants in this operation. We greatly appreciate their support. Prior to this press conference, as the operations of today were unfolding, Assistant District Attorney David Alavesos, who will be assigned to the homicide case, victim advocates from my office, and detectives from the Visalia Police Department had the privilege to speak with the families of these young victims. While they now know and have the relief of knowing who's responsible for killing their precious sons, they also know that the fight for justice has just begun, and they will need stamina to weather what comes next. One of the most common questions that victims and their families ask prosecutors is how much time is the defendant going to get? That used to be a fairly clear-cut answer. However, because of certain changes in the law that have occurred, victims, mothers, must now have a different expectation. The closer one is to crime, to its victims, the more poignant the ramifications of ideological legislation become. In the trenches, in the moments, collective grief shared with families devastated by these types of crimes, prosecutors must always deliver the cold fact that justice is complicated in California right now. The conversation with the families this morning not only involved the arrests, today's afternoon's events, but it also, by tragic necessity, will begin a dialogue with them about the process going forward, and inevitably, what punishment may come. As I said before, the punishment for a special circumstance murder could be the death penalty. But despite the voters of the state repeatedly affirming it, I'm not going to spend any more time talking about how dysfunctional the death penalty is in California. I ask this question: what do we tell these families? If not death, the punishment could be life without the possibility of parole. But even without legislative attacks or reform to the penal code that I do believe is coming, my office in 2021 and then again the year before 2020, we had to inform victims' families that the murderer of their loved one that occurred years ago, that was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, was somehow being considered for release. Again, I ask the question, what do we tell these families in the months to come, and families situated like them all across the state? If the sentence is not LWOP, or life without the possibility of parole, there are other recent changes in the law that these families will have to navigate through. Whether it's youth offender parole, the recently passed SB 81, attacking sentencing enhancements, or challenges to the felony murder rule in California, we can anticipate a long and confusing journey for survivors of crime. Where are their voices in these so-called changes? I don't want to distract too much, though, from the attention that's justly due the Maderos family, the Hernandez Pena family, and the Rule family given by today's events. The story is rightfully about their justice. But let these families remind the lawmakers in Sacramento that decisions made in the Capitol have real consequences, and they cause impossible conversations with families that have been impacted by the most horrific crimes imaginable. Victims deserve truth in sentencing in California. It doesn't exist, and we need to stop pretending that it does. I pray for the families of these young victims that they will have the stamina and the steadfast dedication and focus that will be needed in the long process ahead as we transition in the next phase of this, which will be the prosecution. While the uncertain legislative path may continue to change, it does not and it will not detract any of us, the Visalia Police Department, our Sheriff's Department, our Sheriff, our prosecutors in our office from our duties. We will always serve you and serve the families of this senseless homicide with that persistence, with that dedication, and with that resolve. And it's my privilege right now to introduce to you from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Mark Remley.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. My name is Mark Remley. I'm an Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Criminal Branch of the FBI in Sacramento. Today's operation illustrates the effectiveness of multi-agency law enforcement collaboration to effectively defeat criminal organizations which erode the safety of our communities with violence, guns, and drugs. Local, state, and federal agencies must work together. I began my career in law enforcement over 20 years ago in local law enforcement, and I have the utmost respect for all of our law enforcement partners. The agents, investigators, and analysts who conducted this investigation put their lives on the line and worked tirelessly, even through the holidays, to ensure the safety of their communities. I must thank our FBI colleagues at field offices in who assisted with executing 5 federal search warrants today and 4 federal arrest warrants. The FBI stands ever ready and eager to continue to collaborate with our local, state, and federal partners with investigations that focus on targeting criminal activity and disrupting the entire organization. But collaboration is key, and only together can we help the communities that we serve. I want to thank everyone involved in this investigation, in today's operation, for their partnership and for their dedication to their communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our statements. We have provided some, or will be providing media packets to you that have some more information, press releases from the Visalia Police Department as well as the Attorney General's office with some more, with photos as well as statistics from the operation. So we'll have that available to you. But I want to conclude, obviously, with saying our deepest sympathies to the families who have been impacted by this terrible crime and who lost their loved ones on that night. No family should have to endure a loss like that. And our hope is that today's operation and this investigation can begin to bring some justice to these families and that they can begin to heal, knowing that those who are responsible for this crime are now in custody where they belong. I can't express enough how proud I am that the Visalia police personnel have put so much work and dedication into bringing justice to these victims. Jose Hernandez, Isaiah Rule, and Blake Medeiros and their families. These officers from throughout the organization did a great job in being diligent in this investigation. They never gave up. They worked tirelessly to bring it to this day. They sought help where they needed it, and we're extremely grateful for the assistance that we received from each of the agency representatives behind me here today, who didn't hesitate to contribute resources and their expertise to this investigation for justice and for public safety, and all of the staff from their respective agencies who worked on this investigation. This morning, more than 300 law enforcement personnel, officers and support staff, went out into these communities and served more than 30 warrants. They did it professionally, they did it safely, they arrested a number of violent criminals who were terrorizing this community. And I'm grateful for the work that they do day in and day out, but particularly for how they represented their profession and this community today and brought justice to the victims of these, or the families of these victims. To all the agencies, and there's a list of them in the press release as well, numerous agencies from out the valley came and helped us this morning, and we're truly grateful for their assistance. So with that, we are able to take a few questions at this time, understanding this is still an ongoing investigation. Our detectives are continuing to work this case as we speak, and obviously we're preparing to enter the prosecution phase of Operation Trailblazer. Are there any questions that we can, my colleagues can attempt to address?
Did you feel like the reward played a role in identifying and arresting the suspect?
Yeah, so the question, did the reward play a role? I think the reward certainly helped. Each time we were able to put a release out, it certainly generated different types of tips and leads. That reward is still available. So, as I said, while we made a number of arrests today, we are also still continuing to work this investigation. We know that there are more witnesses out there. We know that there are people that have more information, and we're certainly still trying to identify who they are and hoping that they will come forward with information that would only help this prosecution as it moves forward. But we're also very confident today that we have arrested the 3 individuals responsible for this crime and that they will face justice.
About what time today were these arrests made?
This operation started about 6 o'clock this morning, and it has been going on throughout the day.
Or do you know how the suspects and the victims were connected or why they were being at this time?
At this point, no, I cannot answer that.
I think somebody mentioned having either arrest or a search warrant at a chop shop. How does that connect with the weapons and this massive operation?
As this investigation was ongoing, and we were able to identify potential suspects, and then the course of the investigation, Operation Trailblazer, was focused on developing additional information, conducting surveillance on those suspects to develop a case. And through that process is how we uncovered various types of crimes. Some of these defendants have been charged with conspiracy and aiding and abetting in the crime of homicide. So some of those activities are linked directly to what they did to help carry out this crime. But then also, as we mentioned, it uncovered narcotics and firearms trafficking ring that was going across state lines and throughout our communities as well. So while the focus was primarily the homicide, it uncovered other crimes that this group of criminal gang members were committing. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all for coming today. Again, a huge thank you to all of the law enforcement personnel who worked in this investigation, and our sympathies to the families, and our hope that this will bring them some justice and